Perfect. Let's get started in that case. As I mentioned, it's just 30 minutes today, so just running until 12:30. But thank you for spending your lunchtime with us today. Hopefully it's going to be a session that you find very useful. A lot of work's went into it, and hopefully it's something that you can take a lot from. On the call today, it's not just myself. I have a few colleagues on the call. So if you have any questions during the course of the webinar, just pop those into the Q&A box, and my colleagues will be able to get back to you, during the course of the webinar. If there are any questions, we have a slot at the end, but just to go through those. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions live as well. But yeah, if you have them during the course of the webinar, just pop them in that Q&A box, and someone will get back to you and be able to attach resources and stuff like that. But yep, today is the Accurx fragment reduction training webinar. So this is something that we've developed, over the last few months, and it is in response to increasing pressure on organizations. So that could be from an ICB level, PCN level, or practice level, and worries that may be there in terms of fragment expenditure. So what this is developed to do is to give you a bit of an insight into what an SMS fragment is. It will be able to show you the fragment boundaries and how you can help to stay within those. Give you a bit of an idea around why we care about fragments and what we are doing within product to tackle SMS fragment usage, and also some tips and tricks that you can very easily implement within your organization to reduce out-of-product fragment expenditure. So this will look at ad-hoc messaging, reminder messages, as well as batch messages there. And as I mentioned, we are going to finish today just with a slot. If you have any questions that we can answer live, we're more than happy to do so. This is being recorded, so if what we'll do is just email this out after the webinar today, and I'll attach some additional resources to that so that you can take those away and read over them if you need to do so. But yeah, without further ado, we can crack on with the webinar. So looking first of all here about fragments. So what is a fragment? Fragments are essentially the costs are calculated when sending any message. So when you're sending a message, this will sit within fragment boundaries. Although it appears as one message when you're composing it, and will arrive as one continuous message to the patient, any message is actually split into chunks of around 160 characters, and each of these is called a fragment. So if you had an older phone, like one of the old Nokia phones, you would be sort of familiar with this, because when you'd get text through, it would be broken down into those fragments. On average, one Accurx text is 2.3 fragments, and you or your ICB will pay per fragment, either via Accurx or personal gateway with the messaging provider. What is important to note is that as soon as you cross the fragment boundary, you're charged for the fragment above. It is much like turning a page in the notebook every time each fragment boundary is crossed. So you can see the table which you have here, which breaks down the characters involved, with going up to 4 fragments in this example. So you can see that the one fragment would be up to 160 characters, and then regardless if you use 161 or 305 characters, that would still cost 2 fragments there. So why do we care about fragments? At Accurx, we are committed to promoting best practice that helps save both you and the NHS money. And we're tackling this in 2 ways. So first of all, we are making in-product changes to reduce unnecessary fragments. So a few different ways that we're doing this is first reducing Accurx automated messaging, just to ensure that messages are reduced to the minimum amount required without affecting the patient completion. So an example of 40 questionnaire reminders And we're just trying to make sure that these are efficient as possible, without affecting that patient experience. We're also reducing the length of all Accurx templates. So if you used templates before, you should be aware that there are preloaded templates developed by us here at Accurx. And we are working with behavioral scientists and clinical teams to review all Accurx templates. So that can be, SMS templates or Flory templates, just to ensure that they're communicating the message in the most concise manner possible. Also looking at combining links. So if a healthcare professional needs to send multiple links to a patient, we'll now allow them to be hosted behind one link, which will take patients to the patient portal. This saves on the characters that would otherwise be necessary to send both links to the patient. And then some other sort of longer term changes we're looking at. We're still deciding which of these may have the largest impact, but the type of product changes we're considering include delivering messages through the NHS app, with a fallback to SMS if the message isn't opened within a set time frame. Also having a notification style SMS as a call to action, linking patients to view more content in our patient portal, as well as showing the cost of messages or expected fragments of messages before they're sent. So for example, it would say something like, this message will cost, X pounds to send, just so that you have, a full picture over and above the simple character count of the fragment cost of any particular message. And then it's moving on to now look at the out product changes. So this is based on a pilot that we done with South East London, and we helped a number of their practices reduce their fragment spend via 3 methods. So this was ad-hoc messaging, reminders, as well as batch messaging. And we had a few key takeaways from that pilot that was run. And we've grouped these into these 3 separate streams, and we'll just go through how you can implement these changes within practice. So the first is looking at, reducing fragments for ad hoc messages. And one of the simplest ways to do this is just to review your commonly used templates to ensure they are as concise as possible. So if I go to my Accurx toolbar here, I can open up the message and compose a message screen, and I've got our care record template loaded up here. We can see that this is very short, it's very concise, and just gives the patient the information that they need. So this isn't going to be, or isn't going to have a massive impact on our fragments and fragment boundaries. But what you can do is go through the templates that you have set up within practice, just to ensure that they are, as fragment efficient as possible. So to do that, I could go to my Accurx toolbar here, and if I go to Manage Organization, just bring this over. Then I can go to Templates and Flory questionnaires here. If you're looking at the templates within your practice, you will be able to have an insight into what's included in that template, and if there is any messaging there that perhaps isn't needed and can be taken out for future use. And to do that, it's very simple. Just go to the Edit button beside the template that you want to change, and you can update the body of the text here. If there is any information, perhaps COVID guidance that's no longer needed to be communicated with patients, you can remove that from the template, and then it will just be a case of updating this template. So that will save the template in its new form, with the changes that you've made to make sure that that particular template is as concise as possible. Going back to our compose a message screen here, you are also able to use link shorteners. So at Accurx here, we often use bit.ly, which is just a very common link shortener. And what these do is, take a link that you'd be including in any message or template that you're using, and it would just reduce the character count within that link. So I can give a quick example today. So I'll just go to Bitsly here. And it's very easy to navigate and quick to do. You can generate up to 10 links for free per month using Bitly, and there are a number of other link shorteners out there that you can also use. But if you want to create one, you just hit create new. Go to link here, and I had an example up, so I would just get this example. Just 1 second. There we go. So I'll just use this example in Bitly just to give you insight into how that is reduced in length. So you're going to put the destination on here. This is the link that you would be encoding within the message to the patient. As you can see, this is pretty lengthy. It's going to go, quite a long way to, building up that character count and crossing those fragment boundaries on its own. So what you could do is just use Bitly to shorten this. Just hitting create here. What this will do is just give you a shortened link, which you can copy from the link shortener and include this in the message. So if I was wanting to include that link in this message to the patient, then you can just do so here. And you can see that was vastly reduced from the link that I originally took from the website. If you're often linking the patient to specific places, it's advisable to put these shortened links within your templates. And it means whenever you use these templates, if they're commonly used templates, the shortened version of the link is going to be included, and it will continue to save you on those SMS fragment costs. Additionally, you can also send any ad hoc messages to patients via email. So when you come in to the compose a message field here, it will be by default set up to go to the patient's mobile. But just by clicking on this drop-down menu here, if the patient has an email address on their clinical record, then you are able to contact them via email just by selecting their email here. And this will go via email instead of SMS to the patient. For some patients, this is a preferred method of communication. So, one example is if a patient is receiving a fit or a sick note, quite often they do prefer to receive this via email so that they can quite easily forward it on, via their email account. But yes, it's something that's not that users aren't often aware of, is that you can't send via email. So it's super easy to do. Just drop down menu here, select the patient's email, and when you send this message, it will go to that patient via email. Just going to pop back now to the slides. But we're going to look at the next section, which is going to be reducing fragments for reminder messages. And these are going to be the appointment reminders that you have set up to go to patients. So those that you have set up for your slot types, and it will go to the patients by default 24 hours before their appointment. It's important with these to remember that they just include a very clear call to action, and that any text out with that is limited, just so that you don't you cross those fragment boundaries a lot. You can also set up an additional 7-day appointment reminder, but that isn't always necessary. So in the case that you think some appointments may only need the 24-hour appointment reminder, just to make sure that that's the only appointment reminder that's set up for those appointments. And then also looking at Accurx, so that is our booking system for COVID-19. Having looked into this, we find that having more than 2 manual reminders per invitation, after that it tends to lose its effectiveness. So limiting the number of manual reminders that you're sending out for that. So yeah, I'm going to pop into my Accurx toolbar here, and I want to have a look at the appointment reminders that I've got set up. So to do that, just click on my initials here. And if I go to Manage Organization, then I can scroll down and access my appointment reminders. So I want to go in and just click Manage Reminders, and I can have a look at some of the reminders that I've got set up here. So as you can see, we've got quite a few set up at Accurx here. But if I want to edit any of these, just to ensure that they are as concise as possible and it's very clear call to action for the patient, then what I could do is just click this edit button, and you can go in, you can see the site location, slot types, but also crucially, whatever is included within the body of the appointment reminder itself. So, if there was appointment reminder here that had, the sort of mandatory call to action for the patient, so that is the date, time, and location. If there was additional information that was unneeded here, perhaps, advising to, bring something to the appointment, or, COVID-19 guidance, then you can amend that within the body of the text. So if you want to ensure that it is just the date, time, location that's been sent to the patient, you can leave this free text box blank. What the patient will be given is that information, also a link to cancel their appointment if they wish to do so, and then just the name of the practice at the bottom. As appointment reminders, will be going out to patients, that any that are set up for this slot type, it is advisable just to make sure the additional information within these is as limited as possible. And below this, you can see the reminders that are set up. So I mentioned that, by default, there will be appointment reminders going out to the patient one working day before their appointment. But there is an additional option here of having a 1 week appointment reminder for patients. This is optional, so you don't have to have this set up for every patient or every slot type. So it's really up to you to judge where you think this may be effective. With patients, we find that it's more effective for longer term conditions. So the likes of diabetes appointments, when patients are being sent reminders for these, you may wish to have that 1 week appointment reminder. But you may wish to have it unticked and just have the 1 working day appointment reminder for other slot types there. And when you have chosen to either, delete additional information from the body of the reminder itself, or take away that additional reminder, you can very easily just save those changes at the bottom here. So I know now that, for any patients who are booked against this slot type, that they will just be getting very clear call to action within their appointment reminder. It's just going to tell them the date, time, and location of their appointment, and that they're only going to receive 1 reminder. So it will just be a reminder 1 working day before their appointment. As I mentioned, it's super quick and easy to do, and when you make those changes to your appointment reminders, those are saved until you perhaps choose to go in and make any changes to those in the future. But also looking at Accurx for our reminder messages, as I mentioned, we don't recommend sending any more than 2 booking reminders per invitation. And I can just go into my toolbar and have a look at where you would do that. So just once again, going to my initials on the toolbar. And if I go to Manage Organization here, then those that are familiar with Accurx, will be familiar with this here. And when you go into the Accurx side of it, you can manually send a reminder. So this is where we recommend limiting this to up to 2 reminders, just because it loses effectiveness after that. But if I was to send a reminder, I would just click on the patient that I was sending this to, and you could just go in and send that to the patient. What you can also do, just to track the number of reminders that have been sent, is look at the booking details, and you can see any automated booking reminders that have been sent out to the patient, but also any that have been manually sent. So you can see that I manually sent a booking invite to this patient yesterday. So that is 1 manual booking invite that I've sent. I could send another, but I'd probably not be keen to send any more after that fact, just as it tends to lose its effectiveness. that is looking at how you can be more fragment efficient with your reminder messages. And then we want to have a look at batch messages. And batch messages tend to have, a very large impact on fragment costs. So it's really important to consider fragment boundaries here. There are two main drivers for high batch message fragments. This would be too many messages and messages that are too long. So a couple of ways that you can be more fragment aware when sending batch messages would be first to just keep batch messages to a minimum. So use short and concise messages with those shortened links that we had a look at earlier, and just make sure that the message is relevant to the target cohort. You can also bear in mind that there are other ways to communicate messages to patients. This can be using the practice website or social media or phone. Perhaps if it is a change to opening hours, that's a very good example of something that you can put on the practice website, and avoid, sending out that high volume batch message to patients. And then finally, having a look at, undelivered. So the patients who are not able to receive any batch message, you're still charged if attempting to send messages to these patients. So it's just worth keeping the patient records up to date, and not, incurring any unnecessary fragment expenditure, sending to patients where it's going to come through as undelivered. So when sending batch messages, this would just be back to my toolbar again, and I can just go to this batch messaging button here. What you can do is just click on send a batch message and just go in to send an SMS batch message. You can use templates when sending a batch message, so it is advisable to have templates set up to go if it's something that you're commonly sending out, and that when you've created them, they are as fragment efficient as possible, and it's going to save you not only time but costs associated with that if you're using a template that is nice and fragment efficient. But if you are typing in via free text, it's worth bearing that in mind. So just within the body of text here, it can be in your own words, but just ensure that these are, short and concise as possible. And then when you get through to the next stage, you're going to be uploading your patient list. So this is where it's going to come around to patients that are undelivered. So I'll use our batch demo here. Which should be here. And what this is going to tell me is patients who will be able to receive the batch message, but also those who are unable to receive any particular batch message. It would just take a second or so to load up. Typically taking a bit longer than usual to load up today, but give it a few more seconds. If not, I'll just attach that demo file again. Let's just try this again today. Just going to go in and try and attach another batch message. I'll just use our allergy test template here. You can see that this is a fairly long template, so this isn't an example of what you would be looking to send out to patients via batch, just because it is a longer message, so it's going to incur more SMS fragments, and it's also going to be sent out to potentially large numbers of patients. So just attach my patient file again, and this should load up. There we go. I think it was just testing us on this webinar today. But you can see here that there are 2 patients who are able to receive this badge message. The reason for this is because they have a UK telephone number, but there are 6 patients who are not able to receive the badge message. These patients don't have any number, but it can also be the case that they may have an incorrect number, one that is too short or too long. And it's worth bearing in mind, as I said, that the patients who cannot be sent the message will come through as undelivered. So this will still incur cost. What to do in this circumstance would be to download the list of patients who can't receive the message and just use other means to get in touch with the patients and update their phone number on the clinical records. It just means that next time you come around to encoding this patient on the batch message, that they can receive the message itself, and you're not using those additional fragments for no reason. I'm just a little conscious of time today, so I'll just come around and see if there are any questions that need to be answered. So just got one from Emma Gomez, which just says, is it free if we have less than 160 characters? So in that circumstance, Emma, the first fragment that you'd be using is going to be anything up to 160 characters, so it wouldn't be free. I can see that my colleagues are getting back to these questions, but an additional question from Kim, just asking, do flories count as fragmented messages? Is there usually a questionnaire? So are they expensive to send? So I know Helen has just got back to the user, but it would just be anything within the body of the message. So the only part of Flory that would count towards SMS fragment cost would be the link itself. But the Flory form, the questions within that wouldn't count towards any sort of SMS fragment usage there. That is sort of getting towards the end of the time that we have for the webinar today. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them live in chat. I know there are still a couple coming in to the Q&A box. I can see one from Vinny, just says, can Accurx create a link shorting tool within the platform? And Helen is just getting back to Vinny on that. I don't believe it is something that we're working on at the moment to have our own link shortening tool, but there are plenty of options out there. And those are all very easy to use. It's just a couple of clicks, as an example, with Bitly. But yeah, if there are any questions that I can answer live today, more than happy to do so. What we will do is email out this webinar with a number of SMS fragment resources that you can look over, share with your practice, and hopefully this has significant impact on the SMS costs that you may be incurring. But yep, if that is all, I just want to thank everyone for attending today. If you have any questions, feel free to follow up via email or via our support team, and we're always on hand to help. But yeah, just